The NFT markets are turning into a wasteland. So in this video, we are going to be covering what's going on in the markets, strategies to survive during the bear, as well as some poppin' Solana projects. And by the way, make sure to follow me on Twitter at Patrick Dang if you want the latest alpha on what's going on in NFTs, and make sure to join the Parallax Discord where you can talk about everything that's going on in NFTs. All right, so first of all, we're going to talk about the market sentiment. So if we're looking at Bitcoin, Ethereum, which are pretty much the top coins, everything's kind of moving sideways. There's not like a lot of volume moving in. I think a lot of investors, retail investors, and VCs are understanding that this is a pretty bearish period and things can actually get worse before they get better. Personally, for me, I think having cash is probably the most advantageous thing to do in this situation, not financial advice. But if you really think about it, right, like what's the chance of Ethereum going to like 3K or 4K? It's pretty low, but what's the chance of Ethereum getting to 1.5K or even 1K? It's much higher, right? So the risk to return ratio is not looking too great if you're buying into coins right now. And that's just my personal take. Please do not take that as financial advice. So when I'm looking at OpenSea, right, and we're looking at the last 24 hours, yes, it looks like some projects are popping off. We got like 50% here, 100% here, and then even this one has like 2000%, which is interesting. But that doesn't mean that the market's becoming bullish, because when we're looking at the non-sen indexes, right, which is kind of like, think of it like an S&P 500 but for NFTs, right? We're looking at top 500 things. It's not like there's like this crazy amount of volume going into the space. Like these numbers have been pretty stagnant for a while. So these can be just like these mini pumps that drive more volume into the project for, you know, the last 24 hours. But when we're looking at, let's say like 7 days, for example, it's not like everything's popping off. In fact, a lot of things are also going down, right? So from my understanding, it's really just money shifting around from one project to another. And, you know, as a market, everything doesn't go up unless there's a lot of new attention going into the space. And right now there's just not, right? When we're going on Twitter, what's happening is that a lot of people are disappearing. A lot of influencers aren't as popping as they were, not getting as many likes. A lot of people aren't talking about their favorite NFT. People are changing their picture profiles. You don't see these familiar faces anymore. And so the space is kind of getting into this dry period, honestly. And I'll give you a little insight, even for YouTube channels all across the board, not just my channels, the views have not been as strong as they were, let's say a month or two ago, right? And from a keyword perspective, how many people are typing what NFTs to buy, it actually has been decreasing. Although Solana NFTs have been increasing, a lot of people are shifting their attention there. Overall, if you look at Solana and Ethereum put together, you know, the market is not really expanding. It's just money shifting to another place. And that's what we call a trader's market, where you're just competing against other traders, which makes it very difficult to make money unless you know what you're doing. Over the past month, we've been seeing a lot of Solana project popping in here, right? So yesterday we had Trippin Ape that recently minted. We're going to talk about in a second. OKBears, obviously, you know, going up as well. And then, you know, scrolling down a little bit, we see Bunnies and Homies Club and like OG, whatever. A lot of Solana projects popping off, right? Trippin Ape, you know, the mint I think was like 3.5 SOL or something like that. And the floor price right now is going to be like 60 SOL, right? So if you minted that, it's like a 20x return on investment, which is quite a bit. Now, why is this project like so poppin'? It's really hard to say. I feel like, in my personal opinion, after I did some research on it, and I could be wrong, so if I'm wrong, go ahead and leave in the comments, but I feel like attention is just shifting to Solana. Everybody wants to play the Solana gambling game, in a sense, like the DJing game, right? It's not as if like people just like love the art and like, oh my god, this is the next Bored Ape. It's kind of like meme coins. People just going into the space and people kind of playing that gambling game, then it goes up, then it goes down, and then, you know, that's how people kind of make their money, right? I guess the art and like the teaser and stuff, you know, are better than average when it comes to Solana projects, but if you compare it to like Ethereum projects, it's not actually, you know, that impressive. If this was on Ethereum, would people necessarily want to mint it out? Probably not. And that actually just shows the strength of a project, right? So just the fact that it's on Solana where there's lower competition and people are more interested in Solana and they see these stories of, I minted this thing for 3 SOL and now it's worth 60, right? Those are stories that get people to FOMO in. Doesn't necessarily mean the project is great. We've seen this with meme coins all the time. Like if you go on CoinMarketCap, you go to like the 500th alternative coin, which is just a meme that has no future. You see a lot of money pumping into that as well. So that's kind of like how I personally see it. And, you know, if you're in the community and you think otherwise, go ahead and leave in the comments. I'm not saying I'm right. I'm just saying that from my research, that is pretty much what I'm seeing. And yeah, the Discord is popping and things like that, but like popping about what? You know what I mean? Like what are they trying to do here, right? We've seen it with, you know, early days of Ethereum. Every project was pumping, right? So like, you know, it's kind of the same thing to me here personally. And then when we're looking at, let's say, OKBears, for example, right? I mean, OKBears kind of did set off the Solana wave where, you know, there's so much attention on Solana. The floor price is 199 SOL. So that's going to be about $10,000 in USD. You know, you might say like, oh, this is a blue chip project on SOL. Well, first of all, there's no such thing as a blue chip project as we've seen with all the Ethereum projects crashing down. My personal take on OKBears is that the art is better and the website is better better. The aesthetic, the team probably better communicates their vision to the public a lot more stronger than, let's say, other Solana project, which is absolutely great. I feel like in a way it feels kind of coordinated. I don't know if that's an actual fact, but just the fact that certain influencers, certain traders, certain people all changed their picture profile to an OK Bear around the same time. They all changed their banners at the same time. Everyone's talking about OK Bears, buy OK Bears, buy OK Bears. Feels kind of coordinated to me. And then when you look at it from a VC perspective, right? Like if you're Solana, of course you're gonna want OK Bears or some project to be like your Bored Ape, but for Solana, so that more people are interested in it, more people buy into it. And a lot of times, if you really do your research on, a lot of the top projects on Ethereum, a lot of these times these projects are artificially pumped and they're all coordinated. I wouldn't be surprised if OK Bears was coordinated. I'm not saying it is because I have no proof, but when I see people on Twitter and see how they're promoting it and shilling it and things like that, it's kind of like, okay, would they get that far if these people weren't shilling it? Probably not. From my experience in the NFT space, a lot of pumps are actually coordinated. So if you do invest in a project, I think, again, like I said this before, like watch all the wallets that buy this project, who are the top wallets. You can see this using different analytics tool. And when they start to sell, when they start to dump, that's when you got to get out, right? Because nothing really goes up forever. It could go up pretty high, but like a lot of times we've seen with Ethereum, like especially if you've been investing in NFTs for a while, what happens is a project goes to the moon, right? And everything's up like 5x, which is absolutely great. And then a lot of times, we as investors and traders, we get too greedy and we're like, it's going to go higher. And then it goes back to earth and you're like, oh, damn, I'm back to where I started. So, if I were you, I would take profits when you can, especially during a bearish period where you don't know what the future will look like 6 months from now. Now, moving back into the Ethereum ecosystem, we have Project Godjirah over here that was served a fake cease and desist letter from Japan. Long story short, somebody made this fake letter, right? And I guess they sent it to Opensea and it's been spreading around on the internet. And it's like, hey, you're using Godzilla as our national mascot, things like that. Apparently, I checked on Opensea, Project Godjirah got removed from Opensea because of this letter. And I guess Opensea is like, we don't want to deal with any legal problems, so let's just remove the collection, right? And it seems like the actual letter, when you translate the Japanese on the bottom, it says this is a meme. So it's literally like a false attack on Project Godjirah, which I think is kind of whack. But let's go ahead and dive into this, right? So like Project Godjirah, if you're really looking at it, yes, it does remind me of Godzilla quite a bit. It's not using Godzilla name, but then again, I'm not a copyright lawyer, so I have no idea how this stuff works. I have an idea, but like I'm not an expert. So yes, it's true that Project Godjirah kind of looks like Godzilla, and maybe, even though this is false and probably shouldn't happen, I think the project's fine because they're going to talk to Opensea. They have a lot of volume. Sean seems like a pretty nice guy. They'll probably figure out and get everything listed again and everything be smooth as usual. For holders, they might be thinking, if this happened now, what's the possibility that this will happen in the future? It could happen, or maybe Godzilla, whoever owns the rights to it, maybe they don't care, right? But if it does, what will happen? Well, I think the simple fix is they kind of just change the branding, right? So instead of calling themselves Project Godjirah, maybe they switch it up a little bit, and then it's not sounding as familiar to Godzilla. And then when it comes to the picture, if the picture really is a problem, they can just switch out the PFP, do an airdrop where they give everyone a new PFP under a different branding. But like if the community is strong, then it doesn't matter if it's Godzilla, King Kong, or like banana, or a rat. It doesn't matter what the animal is, as long as people think it's okay, because the community is there for the community, not necessarily for the art itself, right? So if we're looking at Project Godjirah Gen 1, it's like these 2Ds Project Godjirah, which is kind of funny because it's not the best pixel art, but it's all right. It's not bad, but it's like people aren't here necessarily for the art. They can pretty much put anything. I mean, I met some people in Project Godjirah and they all seem like nice people and they really do enjoy the community. So I feel like the community is strong enough to survive anything, or any kind of copyright issue. So I wouldn't necessarily worry about that. It's really just like FUD. People need a story to talk about. Maybe people are kind of bored during the bear market. I think Project Godjirah is going to be fine even after all this. So I think it's just like fake FUD. And I've been seeing this in my Discord, different alpha groups, and it's like, it's not that big of a deal in my opinion. All right, next project we're going to talk about is going to be Moonbirds Oddity. If you know Moonbirds, right, which is a pretty hype project, if you nested your Moonbird, you would get this free NFT airdrop to you. It's called Moonbirds Oddity. So the artist is actually Gremplin, who well known in the crypto space when it comes to his art. So he's doing the art for these oddities. These oddities, people don't really know what it is, but essentially these are pellets, right? And what a pellet is for an owl, essentially, like an owl basically like eats something and they like vomit this thing, and then it's just like this chunk of whatever the vomit is, and you might find like bones in it and things like that. What's inside these things? I don't know. It could be like a bone creature that is very Gremplin style. It can be a companion with your owl, right? There's not too much information on it based on, me going on Twitter and stuff. Interesting that they did an airdrop. It's worth like 3 ETH, which is quite a bit of money, delivering values to their holders in terms of like creating ways for them to make money. But then again, it's like if the utility for a project is just to keep doing airdrops, we've seen that before. It's not bad, but is it the best way to grow a brand? That's another question, right? I'm curious to see like what Moonbirds does, because they're supposed to be like different, they're VC backed and like all these things, but are they going to be doing the same like playbook as all the other NFTs where you like stake it, which is like nesting essentially, and then you get airdrops? I mean, we'll see what people are happy with this. You know, I'm just following along to how this goes, and if there's anything we can learn from a VC backed PFP, just want to bring it up because it sounds interesting. So moving into the IP side, we have this guy Seth Green, which is a pretty famous actor, and basically he had this Bored Ape, right? And he's been building all this IP around his Bored Ape. And if you kind of like do a little research, this Bored Ape is like a character in the show where they're mixing cartoons with real life, and it's like, you know, live action, like people talking. I mean, the future is like using IP into your things, which is pretty dope. The thing is, he got fished, he lost his Bored Ape, and it's kind of sucks, right? Because like if you spend all this money and energy into creating a show, and then your main star is a Bored Ape, and then that Bored Ape is stolen from you, technically the guy who owns the Bored Ape at that point, even though it was stolen, has the copyrights to that ape. So even if they release this show, does the guy, the thief who stole this Bored Ape, does he actually own the right to the show? Or not the show, but that actual character? It's a very weird situation, right? It's a pretty interesting case study, because there are a lot of people who are going to be using Bored Apes, maybe clone X's, whatever the hot NFT is during that time. You know, they have to like lock it in the cold ice vault, because if they don't and they lose it, they might invest like millions of dollars into a Netflix series and then have their thing stolen, and then suddenly this other guy who stole your thing has all the rights to that character, which is kind of ridiculous. I think this is a learning lesson for everybody. I hope, fortunately, you know, he figures out a way to maybe pay money, get it back, and things like that. Right now it's looking kind of grim. If you are ever considering using your NFT in some kind of IP that's going to be around for the long term, like let's say a 5-10 year plus IP, you probably want to put it in its own hard wallet. You want to lock it up, never connect it to like anything at all, ice cold storage, because you do not want to lose that, especially because you build all your IP on that, right? And I think there's got to be a better way for people to protect their rights in the future, and not just like, oh my god, like someone stole my seed phrase and now they took my entire Netflix show, right? Which is ridiculous. But yeah, something interesting going on in NFT space, and I think moving forward, like 1-2 years from now, hopefully we solve this issue, but a lot of people are going to have this problem moving forward. The last thing we're going to cover for this video is basically this article that just randomly I found on Twitter by this guy NFT God. I don't know how credible he is, to be honest. I just found this article that he wrote that actually inspired some thought, right? So he says Artifact will become the largest NFT ecosystem ever. So I don't have any Clone X, so I'm just going to give my honest opinion, and I don't benefit from talking about this, okay? I feel like a lot of projects right now, they kind of go for that metaverse play. Like everyone's trying to do a metaverse, and the problem with that is that you create all this land that is available that nobody will use, right? So like, let's say Bored Ape Yacht Club, they're going to have all this land and like tokens and stuff like that, but like, will it be empty in the future, just like how Sandbox and Decentraland is? Possibly, right? So if they do it and then another brand does it, everyone's doing metaverse land, because that's just a way to fundraise money and like keep the, I wouldn't call it a Ponzi, but keep flow going of like things increasing in value by giving you airdrops. It's kind of dangerous, right? Because if nobody plays the game, then like everything up to that point kind of crashes, and we've seen that with other projects in the past. And I think what Artifact is kind of doing is a little different, where they're kind of tapping into the streetwear market and sneaker market, which is a multi-billion industry, right? So if you think of Artifact, like what is a Clone X? To me, it's a luxury product, right? It's a luxury product that's like 10 ETH or like 13 ETH right now. So that's about, let's call it like 20-25K. So to have a Clone X is basically like a status symbol. It's like buying a Rolex watch that's like 20K, for example, right? Except it keeps giving you different benefits, especially if you are into streetwear, right? And Nike is no stranger to fashion. You know, they've done a lot of high-end collaborations with popular artists and things like that, and their products can range into the thousands of dollars. Like for example, if we're looking at the Nike Air Yeezy 1, which came out a long time ago, the last sale on StockX is going to be $4,400. So like, this is obviously an iconic shoe because it's Kanye West and Nike put together, but like Clone X is huge too, right? And so Clone X is like 20 rap. I mean, like Nike is basically tapping into this market of like reselling sneakers, reselling clothes, reselling collectibles, and they are creating their own ecosystem. So I wouldn't be surprised if like Artifact Studios created their own like eBay, but for like buying and selling NFTs in this specific niche, for example, right? Because if StockX, you know, the valuation of StockX, you know, based on their last funding round in 2021, it's going to be, you know, 3.8 billion. So maybe it's worth more than that right now. So let's just call it like $4 billion, right? So StockX is valued at $4 billion. They don't really create their own products. They're a retailer essentially, like eBay, but for sneakers and streetwear, right? But like if Artifact Studios did that for the digital economy for streetwear things like sweaters, sneakers, anything hype, art, then dude, how valuable can that brand be, right? Especially because they have Clone X that can wear all these things. It creates more added utility. And if we are living more in the metaverse, which just means that we're spending more time online, then, you know, we might want to flex online more than we want to do in real life, right? So just kind of thinking about that, you know, how big is the addressable market for Artifacts and Nike? It's actually pretty big, because they're really just tapping into existing markets and moving them into the digital side, which is truly bridging Web 2 and Web 3 in a certain way. And they're doing it without having to issue a token, although maybe they will have a token. If they do create a marketplace, that could be an idea. But at the moment, they're doing it without a token. They haven't really been giving land, but they've been giving space pods, right? Which is actually pretty cool as well. They're doing it in a little bit of a different way where they're just giving free assets. I guess the assets do make more assets. So it's like, is it kind of Ponzi-ish? Hard to say, you know, just because you get free stuff, can you call it a Ponzi? It's debatable. They're creating things that people want to collect. I think that's an important part where, you know, people who love to collect sneakers, they're going to collect a sneaker because they want to collect a sneaker, right? But then if you're selling like a piece of land that's supposed to generate revenue, then it's like you're only buying a thing to make money, and then it becomes like a real Ponzi, right? They're doing it a different way. So I'm pretty bullish on CloneX. You know, I do want to enter the ecosystem. Hopefully when like everything gets super bearish, which I think will happen, and maybe that's when I'll enter when the price is like much lower than it is now. But yeah, something to think about, because you always want to think like how big is your addressable market, and like realistically, like how likely are they to actually, you know, pull off the promises that they make. And for these metaverse plays, land plays, it's very risky because there's only going to be a few that win, and then everything else is going to be empty. But if they sell you land, the person that sells it to you already won the game because they already have your money, right? Yeah, something always to be careful of. And so with that said, that's everything we got to cover for this video, and I will see you guys in the next one.